Welcome to the Firehouse Roundtable podcast, brought to you by the Ventura Fire Foundation. My name's Peter McKenzie. I'm one of the hosts. I'm a retired fire captain with the City of Ventura Fire Department.
And I'm Jason Kay. I'm an active fire captain also with the Ventura Fire Department.
And we are excited that you are going to spend some time with us at the kitchen table, learning about firehouse issues that we're trying to bring awareness to.
Thanks for joining us as we discuss the issues of being a firefighter, both on and off duty, and how it affects us.
Let's get right to it. Today we have Kyle Tong coming on the show. So I'm looking forward to chatting with him. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing good. Like you said, Kyle Tong today. I've been looking forward to this. Kyle has made a quick rise in the department. He's already a captain after less than 5 years being on Ventura Fire Department. He brings some different experience coming from a Bay Area fire department before Ventura. And his resume is quite impressive from what he's done in his short 4 years. Or 5 years. I don't want to spoil the whole episode, but man, he's part of a bunch of the grant writing group and peer support team. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to talk to him today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it for sure. He's definitely put his head down and busted through multiple brick walls of government bureaucracy, which is going to be fun to talk about. So let's get into the show. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Hey, Pete, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited about bringing you on and kind of talking about your story. For starters, obviously a lot of people at the department know who you are, but for the retired folks and our listeners who aren't at the fire department, why don't you give us a little bio about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Kyle. I'm from Ventura. I was actually born in Oxnard over at St. John's back in the day in 91. So I'm 31 today. Everything I've done, known, grew up has all been in Ventura. I went to school at St. Paul's Elementary, which is now closed. It was a small private school. I did K through 8 there. And then I went to Foothill High School, graduated in 2009. And then that's when my normal Ventura kind of routine got all mixed up. And I went to college out in Utah, in Salt Lake City at the University of Utah. And everyone always asks me, like, why'd you go to Utah? Are you LDS or Mormon? Do you have religious ties out there? Because that's really one of the main cultures out there. And my answer was no. I when I was a kid, my parents took me out there on a ski trip and I fell in love with it. And I always kind of set my eyes like, hey, when I grow up and I can make my own decisions, I want to get the heck out of Ventura. I want to get as far away as possible. I want to be a ski bum. I want to be a snowboarder and, and live that lifestyle. And so I pretty much did that. And I went to the University of Utah. I ended up graduating with a 4-year degree in Bachelor of Science in health promotion and education with an emphasis in emergency management. And while I was at school there, I ended up working like 3 or 4 part-time jobs all at once while being a student. And it was because I love those jobs. I was a snowboard instructor. I was a ski instructor. I taught like the kids race team for Solitude. And I was a snowboard instructor for the same mountain. And then I worked at Deer Valley on part of their ski patrol team. I worked as a paramedic for some urgent cares and skilled nursing facilities. And I had pretty much a pretty good resume for being a ski bum out there. And when I went through paramedic school, I did my internship with Salt Lake City Fire, and I totally fell in love with the job. I had no exposure or no one in the family in the fire service until I did my internship, and that was for paramedic school, and that was my first exposure to the fire service. And I never looked back. I was like, this is what I want to do. I know it's really competitive. I'm gonna get as many jobs as I can. I'm gonna finish my bachelor's. I'm gonna build up my resume. And so that's kind of how I ended up having such a busy workload when I was maybe 21 years old. And so I applied everywhere. Berkeley Fire found me, or I guess I found them maybe, and they offered me a job, and it felt like winning the lottery. I'm like, man, I'm really young. This is a 6-figure job. Like, awesome, right? So I took it, never looked back. I have no ties to Berkeley. I had nothing. I had some family in the Bay Area, but that was it. So I took that job. I invested everything I had in it. I loved it. I made some really good friends, connections, education and training there. And then in 2017, when the Thomas fire happened, we sent some resources down, and I wasn't on the eligibility list to go down when the deployment got sent out. And I was so mad. I was like, this is Ventura. This is my hometown. What the heck am I doing up here in Berkeley? I'm pretty much like helpless and hopeless right now. And surprisingly enough, the junior firefighter who was at my station, his cousin is Eric Mukes, a captain at Ventura City, and he put me in touch with Eric, and I started just asking some basic questions like, hey man, like, is it possible? Can I get down there? Like I hear this lateral process. I've never heard of a fire department doing laterals like ever before. Like, how does this work? So one thing led to another, and the next thing I knew, I was taking the sea paddle secretly down in Southern California, so none of my friends in Berkeley would find out. And now I'm a captain here at Ventura City. So that's how I ended up back home.
I like that. I want to talk about something not related to the fire department, but that you said that, you grew up in Ventura and all you wanted to do was get the heck out of Ventura and go experience something else and live somewhere else. And I think that's pretty common, right? Like I had the same feelings about where I grew up. I think it's like a normal thing. But then you like flipped a full 180 and then it was like, oh, I actually do like where I grew up and there's all this stuff that I do like. And now all I want to do is get back, which is a little bit harder to do when you're a firefighter for another department, right? Like it's not like you just show up and go to work. It's process, all that. So talk a little bit about that. Like when did you like flip over and go, I actually do like Ventura. I want to come home.
It's funny. I never really acknowledged or admitted that I wanted to come home, even when deep down, I think I wanted to. But towards my last maybe third or fourth year out in Utah, like I was dying to come home for the summer, right? And arguably that's like the biased part of it, because summer in Ventura, like it's warm. There's the water's nice. Everyone else is home from school, and so like yeah, duh, I want to come back and hang out at home and have no responsibility, and every day is summer. But I didn't really realize that, and so when I further I got in life, I'm out in Berkeley, and I would start doing the same thing. I would stack all my vacations over August and September, a little bit of July, and come down and hang out with my friends I grew up with, and spend my summers down in Ventura. And honestly, it was never really an option or a pathway to come back, right? It was never like my end goal is to be back in Ventura. I always wanted to get out. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to prove myself to whatever it was, my friends, my teachers, my ex-girlfriends, my parents, like, hey, I could do this on my own, right? And so it all happened so fast. Like you said, as a firefighter, switching departments is not some easy task like travel nursing or laddering in a tech company. It's rigorous. It's you're going from a very comfortable position to having everything on the line, being on probation, the possibility of getting fired at any moment, right? Starting the promotional process all over again. I worked really hard in Berkeley to have a good reputation, and that was the same thing. Start your reputation all over again, make new friends, and that was a really tough thing.
I think it's funny that when you happened to call down to Ventura to get some advice, it was just happened to be Captain Mukes, who's been running the Lateral Academy for a long time. After you talked to him, did he run your academy?
No, I don't even remember. I think I had Manzano as my academy lead.
Okay. And where did you go to medic school? You said it was in Utah?
Yeah, so I got a pretty cool program that I would love to recommend for anyone who's looking to do this route. But I got my paramedic school through the University of Utah. It counted as, I think, 45 semester credits towards my degree. So pretty much for my junior year in college, I did nothing but paramedic school. That was it. I worked my little part-time jobs, doing it. And they're keep in mind, they're fun jobs. This is just snowboard instructing. It's pretty much glorified babysitting for 8 hours a day.
Oh, I could just for the record, I could totally see you as a snowboard instructor, especially having little kids and putting them in classes and whatnot. Like, I could see it for sure.
Yeah, thanks. It's something I never want to do again.
Your career path is kind of like mine, where you promoted a captain pretty young. What made you want to take the test early? Was it a combination of having that experience from Berkeley and coming down, or what was it that motivated you to kind of promote early on?
Yeah, so a couple things. I had experience from Berkeley, and I actually wasn't planning on taking the most previous captain's test that I got promoted on. And a big part of it was well, I'm sure we'll get into it later, but I had a lot of extracurricular kind of programs going on within the department. And it's tough, man, as a firefighter, as a new firefighter in the department, or even as a new engineer, it's hard to say, hey, I'm trying to make some change. I know it's for the better, but I haven't really earned the respect from time on the job yet, or earned the respect in rank. And I hate how that is a factor in this job, that, because you're a captain or a chief, whatever you say, there's a little more pull to it. And it's a bummer that's the way it is. And I don't think you necessarily have to be a captain to make change. Like, I wasn't a captain and I was able to make change, but it's definitely a lot easier to facilitate it. And ultimately I saw an opportunity and I almost did it out of necessity, right? Like, hey, there's captain promotions coming. There's a lot of guys, a lot of great engineers, a lot of great firefighters who would make amazing captains, but they're not wanting to promote for whatever their reason is. And someone has to step up, because it doesn't matter if there's an opening, if there's a badge, so it's going to go to someone. And those guys who I wanted to be a captain before me, like, they weren't stepping up. And so who else is going to step up, right?
There's a lot to what you're saying, and I think it's worth talking about, because there are some generational differences across the human population, right? So, and we're seeing it in the fire service, like the generation that's coming on, the younger generation. Not that it's good or bad. That's not the point of what I'm trying to say. It's just there's different levels of like commitment and involvement and wanting to get involved in extracurricular things in the fire department itself. And I think you are a little bit of an anomaly, right? Because and part of the reason I wanted to talk to you and bring you on the podcast is you've done a lot of things at our department in a very short period of time. You've had success with it, which is commendable and awesome. Like, I don't want to say I reject the premise that you have to have certain time and rank, or you have to be in a certain rank to do something. You're an example of that's not actually true, and it can be done. But I think what's helpful for the guys below you or in your peer group is, and we have the same problem. We've had this problem for a long time. It's like we have a very finite amount of people, say 10% of the people, that are doing 90% of the work when it comes to extra stuff or programs or volunteering or the foundation work. It's all kind of the same. And I have often said, like, I don't really want people to do what, for example, Jason K does, which is raise his hand for every program because no one else is doing it and he does all of it, right? Like, that's a great way to burn our people out. And the reality is Jason's not alone. Like, everybody knows in the department who the guys are that do all the work, right? It's common knowledge. But it would be so much better and it would be so much more effective if we distributed that workload out among more people. And I think that's where the generational differences come in, that we're not seeing it. Like, we don't see the people stepping up to do the things. But my advice is always like, don't be like Jason K. Raise your hand and do one thing and own one program, right? Like, for example, we're going to talk about some of the grant stuff here in a little bit, but like, if just 10 people all raise their hand to do one thing, we'd be way better off than a guy like Jason K who raises his hand for everything. And I don't know what we can do to motivate that generation or that class coming in underneath us, but it's something worth talking about. What's your opinion on that, Kyle? Because I'm curious about, because you're from that group, kind of.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I think it's good to like be the master of that craft, right? Like Jason's our USAR guy. Like, he's the go-to guy for it. He knows everything about it. I think that's perfect. Like, I wish we could be more like skill specific like that. I think, and this is my success. Like, the true secret behind it is I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, and that's the true, like, I think the secret to my success. And I say that because for the younger generation and those who need the motivation, I would say the biggest hurdle or roadblock is the fear of the unknown, right? Like, can I even do this? Can I even make this change? Like, what if I fail? Like, are people going to laugh at me? And that goes same for the promotional test, right? Like, I don't really want to put myself out there, because if I try to do the engineer's test and I hit a cone, people are going to make fun of me, and there's going to be jokes for decades, right? And that's like the biggest week, right? I mean, you could sit in whatever spot you're in, you're comfortable with your daily tasks, your routine on calls, all that. But then if you put yourself out there for that promotion or for this project and people don't like it, or you're unsuccessful or you fail, right? Like, what are the repercussions of that? And then you go, oh, it's not worth it. Like, what? I'm just going to keep status quo doing what I'm doing, right? I'm good at it. And that's fine. Like, we need those guys, right? We need those truck engineers who know exactly what they're doing, who are reliable, dependable, who've been on the truck for, 10, 15 years, right? So there's value to all of it. But for me, like, and I have a probationary guy right now, and one of the things that I'm encouraging him is, if you have an idea or if you think you can make things better, then do it, right? It might not work the first time, or people might not like it, but it's better than just sitting around the table and complaining about how things could be better or how we should do things. Yet that's the extent of your influence, is just complain about it.
Try to empower your guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Kyle promoted early, and he promoted under, hey, I'm going to do some extra stuff because I believe in it, and because it's helpful and it's good for the community and it's good for the department. Now you're at the point where you feel like I'm at the rank to make some change, but you have guys below you now, and then you can empower them to kind of do what you did. And I think that's part of where I'm hoping the fire department in general, not just Ventura, but all fire departments go, is as a leader and a supervisor, we're here to empower our people to be able to do more. And I think that's my focus on this generational shift. Is it's not just look at the guys above me who are doing all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff to do, and we need help. And it's not just going to get shut down because you're not one of the supervisors on the crew. I think you've done a good example of that. And now you can kind of be that example. Like you said, you have a probationary guy, and hey, everybody at 3 is always going to have a probationary guy, at least for the next few years.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully you didn't take offense to me telling everybody not to be like you, Jason.
No, I get it, man. I tell you about my schedule all the time. We can only record podcasts every so often because everything's booked every day. Kyle, would you get into one of your first projects that I think you have 3 that ring out in my head, but the first one you did was before you were a captain, and that was the Lucas device, right? So talk a little bit about that, why you chose that, and then I think you got grants for that. Is that right?
Yeah, so that was the beginning stages of my grant career. But when I first started here, I remember this so clearly. We were doing our CAM, our cardiac arrest management training, down at our training grounds with our EMS coordinator. And coming from Berkeley, let me preface this. We had a Lucas device, which is an automatic CPR device that does compressions for us. And my whole fire career, we used one. And so when I came to Ventura and saw we were doing, manual CPR during our training, I was like, man, this is pretty archaic. Like, I haven't done this in a while. Like how do I run a code like this again? Like, I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, but shoot, like, I haven't done it like this, in this way, in the Ventura City way or the Ventura County way. And so I approached our EMS coordinator and our medical director saying, hey, have you guys ever given thought to the Lucas device? It works pretty well. I've seen it. And the response was, well, yeah, we can't really afford it. We don't have the funding for it. It's a whole bunch of issues. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. Well, I'll just keep my mouth shut while I'm on probation and be a good soldier for a year, right? So once that year ended, I revisited that topic. I said, hey, I know, like, in my heart, this is for the betterment for our guys, our patient care, and our community. Can we please put a little more effort into, like, just looking into getting these? And after just pushing and prodding, Heather finally gave me the green light, like, hey, you can get these if you can find funding for it. And so I called up in my previous coworkers in Berkeley, and I just asked them, hey, how are we able to afford these? Like, these are $25,000 units, and we have one on every engine. Like, that's probably the most expensive piece of medical equipment. And they, we got it through a grant like years ago. Okay, cool. So I went to our financial analyst at the time and said, hey, I want to do a grant to try to get these. And he said, absolutely not. That is the hardest grant to get, the AFG grant, the Assistance to Firefighters. Like, we don't do that. It's way too challenging. You'll never get it. It's a waste of your time. I was like, well, let me just try. I'll do all the work. You just sit there and hit submit. So he's like, okay, that's fine. And so I was on engine 7 at the time, which is our 40-hour engine. And pretty much every day I would bring my laptop, I would do the application, I would work on the narrative, I would write, freaking 3 pages worth of writing, and then, I don't like it, and just delete it. Right. And so I did that for probably about 2 or 3 months. Anyways, I finally had a product. I really had nothing to reference. I was just kind of shooting from the hip. And the way the grant works is that it's got like 4 or 5 topics, right? Like, why do you need this? Describe your community, describe your financial needs. And again, I'm a 1-year firefighter for the city of Ventura. I have no idea what our financial needs are for the department. I have no idea what the operating budget is. So I'm doing all this research, trying to find it. I'm bothering chiefs. I'm bothering captains, like, hey, I need this information, please. And long story short, hit submit. Maybe about 6 months later, I get a call from our EMS coordinator saying, you're not going to believe this, but you just got a grant for about $300,000 to get Lucas devices on all of our apparatuses. I was like, no way, that's awesome. That's so cool. And then she goes, so now you got to train everybody in it. I'm like, what?
I was waiting for that.
That wasn't part of the plan. Like, I just got these things. Like, she's like, you're the only one who's used them, so you're doing the training. I'm like, okay. And so there I am. I probably have about 1.5 years on, and I'm going to each station, each crew, still on engine 7, dragging my senior engine. I had probably one of the most senior crews on engine 7.
Who was the crew? It was Dietz?
It was Chris Dietz, who's still telling stories about the Civil War as we're driving to calls. And I'm rolling around with those 2 grumpy guys, saying, hey, I gotta go teach engine 5 about, my medical device. And you know what? The first challenge was to get buy-in from those 2, right? Like, hey, here's how this device works, and sure enough, they bought in. And I think a lot of the success came from, like, I truly believed in it. Like, hey, I believe in this device. Let me show you. Let me tell you. Let me do all the work. All you have to do is just watch. And so that was the first task. Once I got buy-in from them, it was okay. Now I got to get buy-in from 70 other guys who've all been here longer than me, right? Who have all been paramedics longer than me, who have all worked for this department longer than me, who are all promoted.
Let me pause you for 1 second, because I want our listeners to understand something. In fact, I vividly remember our fire chief, David Andaya, telling a story about how when he first got promoted to the chief, he wanted to change something. I think it was like the type of toilet paper holder in the bathroom, and what a bureaucratic nightmare that was for him as the fire chief to do, right? So I just want to demonstrate what a feat that was, that you, as a 1-year firefighter, came in. I mean, this is just a testament to you, but it's also a learning experience for everybody else. Is like, in the fire service, which is a heavily bureaucratic, red tape government agency who resists change like nobody's business, right? For you to come in and be here for 1 year and go, oh, we don't apply for these grants? Okay, I'll just go back to being fireman. No, you didn't do that. You said, oh, I'll do all the work. And then they said, it'll never happen. Or you basically, the point is, you didn't take no for an answer. You believed in something, and you were like a pit bull in your kind, gentle Kyle Tong way, and went after it, and were successful. Like that, our listeners need to understand that is, 1, it's rare. 2, it was rare that you had the success you had. And that was only half the battle. Now you got to go train all these people how to do something that no one's ever done before. And anyway, I just want to say that's awesome. And the fact that you were able to pull that off 1 year in just reinforces to me that you are going to be the fire chief at some point for this department. So we don't have to spend all the time on the Lucas device, but I think the point is made that you had some challenges and you didn't let any of it stop you. So I think you're the type of guy that could probably do anything you want.
On the Lucas device, do you have stats on it does so much better or any of that? I'm sure you had to do all that for the Safer grant. Do you have that in your head?
I don't have the hard numbers in my head, but what I can say is we've had a significant improvement as far as our patient outcomes go. We have probably 2 or 3 calls that, regardless of the argument of if it does CPR better or not, which it does do better CPR, I can say that the ability for us to perform CPR and move patients has dramatically changed the way we do business. For one, instead of requesting 2 fire engines to come to any cardiac arrest call, like one engine can handle it, meaning another engine is available to run other calls, right? The other bit to it is I can think of 2 or 3 calls offhand that the patient would have died. No questions. The patient would have died unless we were able to put the Lucas on and move them. One of them was on a boat, right? Like there's no way we're doing CPR on a boat, up a loading dock, down the alley, into the ambulance, right? Like the Lucas hands down saved his life. That's where it allows us to perform our job in situations and environments that otherwise we would not be able to do anything, really. So that's the huge benefit for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So people don't realize who aren't firefighters that a cardiac arrest is probably one of the most physically demanding calls. Of course, probably the most for as far as medical calls that we go to. Not only because you're in an active state the whole time doing CPR, but it's such a critical call that nobody's going to give up. So at no point do you tap out and go, man, I'm tired. But these are calls where guys will hurt their back because they're still doing CPR 30 minutes later. And it is 30 minutes with our new protocols too. And like you said, if somebody's being transported on a gurney or if somebody's on a backboard, this device we can leave on them and continue to have oxygenated blood flowing, as opposed to what we used to do, which is, okay, everybody pause CPR for 5 minutes while we get them to the gurney. So I just wanted to comment on that for people who aren't in the EMS field.
Hey, this is Joe Booth from the Ventura Fire Foundation. To learn more about the foundation and our programs, visit our website at www.venturafirefoundation.org. 100% of our funding comes from generous donors. And if you like what we're doing, I encourage you to become a donor. It's very easy. Just go to our website, again, that's venturafirefoundation.org, and click the red donate button at the top. Whether it's $5 or $5,000, every donation helps ensure local firefighters thrive.
So let's transition from this into how you got the nickname for the GOAT of grants. Let's talk about the SAFER grant, what it is, and the effort that you put towards it.
Yeah, so this was, I think last Christmas, I got a phone call from our assistant chief at the time saying, hey, we want to go for some more grants. Do you mind, writing them? And the previous financial analyst who told me, hey, like, we don't do these grants, they're too hard, blah, 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 he actually resigned. So, and it was during COVID. So we actually didn't even have his position. He's the guy who's supposed to be doing the grants. And we were just running it vacant. So here you go, Kyle. Like, here's his office, right? Like, yeah, get whatever you need. Well, one thing to know about this guy, like he was great. Like, he was a really good person. He meant well, but he had his system, and his system was hard copy filing cabinet. That was it. So I go into his office and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to find any useful information in here that I need. Which, to do these grants, you need to have your call makeup, your NFIRS numbers, the number of vehicles you have, how old they are, the mileage on them, like all kinds of just frivolous data, right? And I told the assistant chief, like, hey, if you want me to do this, like, you got to take me on a 40-hour work week. I can't be, running 10 calls at night and then get mandated, for 2 extra days and expect to get this done. Because when they asked me to do this, they actually asked me to submit 3 grants. They asked me to submit for 2 Type 1 engines, 1 heavy rescue USAR, and the SAFER grant. All 3 like very high ticket items that need to be, very good grants. And like myself, and I'm sure everybody else in the fire service, I hate to do things that are kind of half done, or, I want it to be perfect, right? I want everything to be done perfectly. We have a lot of OCD in the fire service, and this is just another thing that requires OCD. So when they asked me to do it, I said, okay, like, we'll do 2 engines, we'll do this USAR grant. And they asked me to do it 2 weeks already into the application period. So I had lost 2 weeks of time to get this done. And I'm like, I can't just, and again, like, each one of those topics to write about is about 2 or 3 pages. So my grant application in its entirety for one grant is usually about 10 to 12 single space PDF file of just words. And it was a lot. And again, like, I didn't know a whole lot. So I had my two lifelines were Alex Hamilton, for the chief from Oxnard, and Gene Fong, who's a battalion chief out of Ventura County. And they're busy too. They're writing grants. They're chiefs. I'm not promoted. I'm a firefighter at this point, right? Like, hey, chief, can I bother you with some numbers for our department that aren't going to help you out at all, right? So I maybe had 2 or 3 phone calls with them. They sent me like a couple sample narratives. They sent me, and I had to pull all their vehicle numbers too for the vehicle grant. And so I got all their vehicle numbers. I'm plugging all that in. Long story short, we did not get the apparatus vehicles because we applied for too many on a technicality. So we automatically got disqualified for that, which was frustrating to hear after the point because I put so much work and time into it. But on that side note, we did resubmit for the heavy rescue USAR for this fiscal year. So fingers crossed, we'll see if we get that. Which then brings me to the SAFER grant, because once I finished the vehicles, it was, okay, move on into the SAFER. And I did a lot of work with Chief and Dia going back and forth, like, what are our numbers? What do we even want, right? Because I'm not the fire chief. I'm a 3-year firefighter at this point. Like, just tell me what you want, chief. I'll do it. And so we had to kind of get a game plan together. That was the first step. Then, luckily, our department has so many studies, which is it could be a whole nother podcast, but we are one of the most studied, highly, research departments in probably all of Southern California. And so I was able to use a lot of those studies into my narrative, which essentially just says, like, we don't have money and we need help. We just need more people. And I put all those together. And when I finally hit the submit button, I was so stressed out to get everything done that when I finally hit submit, I think I was still like hypertensive and just losing sleep at night for probably 2 weeks after I hit submit, just from the stress from it. Right. It was a lot of work, and I'm super proud of it. Like I wish I wish we had the time here to just read the narrative, because it really paints a good picture of where we're at, where we've come, what we need, and how far behind we are as far as funding, staffing, apparatus, facilities, all that. Like, we are really struggling as a department, which is why we got this grant, right? And I just want to say too, it's not like, hey, here's $7.6 million of free money, right? Like, no, like this is tax dollars from Congress, right? Like, this is $7.6 million that someone else needs too. We just need it more. So let's make the most of it, right? Because I don't know if we're going to get it again. And someone else, this is $7.6 million that we earned over someone else too, right? That someone else probably could have used.
What did that $7.6 million go for? What did that equate to in like layman's terms?
So $7.6 million will fund the salaries of 13 full-time firefighters for 3 years. That's all of their hourly wages and their benefits. As far as like their extra costs go, which are usually one-time purchases like PPE or their uniforms, all those one-time cost items, that comes out of the city's pocket, as well as the overtime too. But it's hard to say how much overtime they'll work, right? You could get a guy who doesn't work any overtime, and so there's zero cost.
Yeah. So 13 guys have one person to thank for their job.
Yeah, at least for the next 3 years, right?
Yeah. They might hate you if they all get fired after 3 years. No, I'm kidding. It's just crazy that you came in and did. How long have you been on the department total?
4.5 years.
4.5 years. So you came in, you pushed through a crazy, Lucas grant. You helped hire 13 people. I mean, I'm excited about your future. I think your future is definitely bright. So Kyle, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about another thing that you're doing, which is going to shock everybody, I'm sure, is this walk that we're doing for Clappy and how you got tied into that, what it is. Let's give it a plug. I don't know if this episode's going to air before, but regardless, and then kind of your involvement with peer support and how that came about as well. So let's talk about that.
Okay. So we have I think it's the second annual Hero Walk. It's like a Hero Walk / Carry the Load, which is an organization throughout the country that is, just to remember the fallen. It's all about line of duty deaths. And Jeff McGreevy, he's the organizer for this event, which is April 29th in a couple of weeks here over at the Oxnard Harbor. He's collected all of the fallen first responders, military, police, fire, EMS, all of it. And he honors each individual person at this walk. And it's people from all the way from the 70s, 80s, 90s to, this year, right? And so this year, we're adding Matthew Clapsaddle, who passed away this past year in August. And it's not a fundraiser. It's not anything. It's just to remember those who have given their life in the line of duty. I attended last year with a few others from Ventura City. And all I can say is, one, it's for us, right? It's good to remember the fallen. It's good to continue the grieving process. But ultimately, I'd say the number one, best kind of outcome of this event and others like it is it's for the families, right? Like their families show up. They know that we still remember their loved ones. They know that we still care, that we're still there for them. And like I said, these are families who lost, people back in the 70s, right? Like here we are 40, 50 years later, still walking with their name on a banner, with their picture up, that we remember why they died and what they served. And that when we continue with our jobs, right, like this is the importance of it, that will still be remembered, right? Should we give a significant sacrifice in the line of duty, and that my family, they know that I'll be remembered should something happen, right? It's a really good community, and it's not just fire, right? It's the police, it's military, it's EMS, it's all of it, because it's all kind of just one umbrella.
Yeah, Jeff is a pretty amazing guy. He's done that. Well, you said this is the second time, but this isn't his first foray into nonprofit work. He I think was Oxnard police sergeant, and he's been interacted with our foundation for years now, and he does a lot of good things from different organizations he belongs to. But yeah, I think it's awesome. It's commendable that you're kind of leading up the charge to honor Clappy for sure. Tell us about the peer support team. Why'd you get on that?
I've been on the peer support for maybe 6 months now. I was actually actively recruited to join it. And I think this is a little background about me, but I've got a little dog. His name's Finn. He's getting up there. He's probably about 13, 14 years old now. But back when I was in college, this is another thing I had on my resume, was I had Finn as a certified therapy dog. And we did our trainings. We did all of our certifications and prerequisites and whatnot. And we went to the local children's hospital in Salt Lake, and we participated in a lot of physical therapy work with the kids, petting him or throwing the ball, or just little visits throughout different hospital beds. And afterwards, side note, but my grandpa died of Alzheimer's here in Ventura. And so one thing that my mom does is she continued to take Finn to these elderly folks' homes to see the dog and continue the therapy work. And it was nothing I did specifically. Finn was just a great dog who kind of fell into it. And someone approached me and said, "Hey, you have a really friendly dog. You should, look into doing this therapy work." So we have a therapy dog for the department now, and it's kind of a work in progress. We're trying to learn a lot of things as we go. It's another new program. And that's when the peer support team asked me, like, "Hey, can you join the peer support? We want to have you, you have a kind of a history with this and helping others, and especially with pet therapy as well. We'd like to just bring you on as just kind of a consultant." And a lot of the guys, look to you as well, and you kind of just check all the boxes for peer support. So that's how I ended up on the team. I've had a short time on there now. I love it. I think it's great. I think that's probably one of the biggest places I can make, a good impact for our guys.
Yeah. I think it's commendable that basically everything about you screams, selfless, volunteer, charity. Where did you learn that? Is it in your family? And I'm kind of alluding to, I know your family does some charitable work too, but did they raise you to be like this, or how does that come about?
It's funny you say that. My dad is really big into charity. He grew up pretty poor, and I don't know a whole lot about my dad's childhood, but one thing I do know is that money wasn't a thing for him. And he's told me, multiple times that there's no inheritance from him. His inheritance is all going to charities or some of our other family members who are less off than we are. He's a big believer in the whole money doesn't buy happiness sort of thing. And he had a 35, 40-year career at the community college and working in the maintenance field. And he's donated a significant amount of his earnings back to that college. And I think just because he cares, he invested so much time into it, and that's what he cares about. That's what he's passionate about. But there's really no, lesson I got that was like, okay, Kyle, sit down. We're going to have a chat about being, selfless and charity. It was none of that. I really don't know how I kind of got in this situation. The reason why I say that's funny is I have as of the last 2-3 months, I'm a new father. I have a son now, and I'm thinking like, how can I raise this kid to be better than me? Like what was my influence? I kind of try to pick apart my life as I'm sure a lot of us have, just self-reflected, how did I end up where I'm at now? And there are plenty of times when I went right, when I could have gone left, and I have no idea why I made that decision. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with my mom or my dad just yelling at me if I did make the wrong decision. But
there's got to be something in the gene pool there.
Yeah. I'll also make the point that although maybe your dad didn't sit you down and have a formal conversation on being charitable and how this all works, he definitely set the example, and you definitely followed it, right? So that to me is clear, because just from your story and what I know about it, I mean, it's obvious you care, you're willing to invest the time, you're willing to take action, which is what separates, in my opinion, successful people from unsuccessful people. Is you're not afraid to get up and do it, put your neck out and make it happen. But yeah, anyhow, I think your story is amazing. I feel like I'm a fanboy of yours now that we've really gotten into all the details of it.
I got 2 things that I want to do a shout out for Kyle. Number one, I got my money riding on you for our USAR grant. You talked about how I'm into USAR for the department and that we're trying to get another grant for a new vehicle.
Yeah.
So I got a lot riding on you, man. Let me know what you need for support on that. And then the other thing, I don't know if our listeners know, we had a huge baby boom in the fire department. Kyle's one of I call him the grade 8. I think we had 8 children born to firefighters for Ventura City in 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
And you guys have all kind of joined forces, and you guys go hang out together and do stuff together as new parents too, which is cool.
Yeah, it's been a unique experience. That's for sure. Some of my best friends in the department have all had kids. Coincidentally, it just kind of happened, and it was like from start to finish, like, oh, like so-and-so is trying to get pregnant, and then it's like, hey, we're pregnant. Oh, hey, we're pregnant too. And what's your due date? Oh, it's this, it's that. But, it's just exciting. But I think where we talk about this a lot, just lately and in previous podcasts, but how tight-knit of a group we are. And to go back to bring this full circle, that was one of my biggest hesitations leaving Berkeley. Was I had so many good friends up there. I had so many close coworkers and, their girlfriends, their wives, all of it. And my biggest fear was losing that coming here to Ventura. And, I kind of just like, you know what? Like, I'm not looking back. I'm going to leap headfirst into this. And even if I don't make any friends here, I still have my idiot high school buddies I still run around with, right? But like, lo and behold, like, it's here too, right? Like, I found some really good friends here. I found some really good just connections. My wife found some really good friends here. And now that we're going through this next stage in life with having kids, it's almost taken a huge weight off my shoulders, having to be gone at work, to be mandated to be up at night, to come home tired, my wife has been able to go through some of this, the process of a new mom with other new moms, and they're there to support each other. And we stop by in the engine at my house, and there's 3 other moms there and the kids all running around, which makes me feel better. It makes, my other coworkers feel better because they're stuck at work with me, and the girls are really able to just kind of help each other through this in a way that they wouldn't be able to, without these kids. So back to the whole fire family thing, we're a pretty close department, and I'm very thankful for that. And that didn't come overnight, right? I mean, you go through some of these challenges and hardships, and that's what creates, a lot of these bonds with one another.
That's funny you say that, because that's what you're talking about is exactly what the foundation wants to foster and promote. And you guys were all drawn together by 2 things. One, the department, and then 2, you all had babies and were living through that big life change at the same time.
Like Peter said, that's a bond that you guys will have forever. And we've done events where we're trying to foster not only just wives, but families together. So I actually feel like that's a good time to wrap it up. Peter, look, you got one more thought.
I was just going to say that when I was having kids at the department, the people that we had kids with, that never goes away, right? Like I still keep tabs on the other guys' kids who had kids when we were in a similar age. And then ideally your kids are going to be friends with all of these guys' kids. So, and that's the awesome thing about the Fire family is, I mean, you're not going anywhere, right? You guys are all going to work at the same place. You're all going to grow up. And life, the stages of being a parent is crazy, right? Like we could have a whole podcast on that and the struggles and strategies to offset some of the things related to being a firefighter and a father and a mother. But yeah, I think that's cool that there was so many of you because you're going to have your own little tight knit thing there for a long time. Well, I think this ended up being a great podcast. I really appreciate all the work you're doing, Kyle. I think your future is bright. Actually, one last question. What is your advice that you would give to a newer firefighter who is interested in taking some of the same steps that you took in your career?
Ooh, that's tough. Part of it I want to say is there's no advice. I'm just super awesome, and there's no way you could follow in my footsteps. But if I were to try to
shut it down.
Yeah, good luck. Here's the bar. No, one thing that I always reflect on is my very first couple of years in the fire service. It was kind of that old school mentality up in Berkeley. Like, man, I would get yelled at. I would, I was a true probie, right? And again, like not knowing the fire service, I didn't have a father who was a firefighter who could tell me right from wrong or what the culture was or don't sit in that chair, right? Like, I don't know. So I had a pretty steep learning curve at the beginning. I was barely 22 when I got hired, and I don't think Berkeley had hired anyone that young in a very, very long time. So, man, I was fresh meat. So I had a pretty tough first couple of years, and the one thing I really learned from that is to not forget where you came from, right? Because I looked at these older guys who, like, while I was getting chewed out, I would just look right back at them, going, "Man, no one told me, like." Do you remember what it was like when you were, second day on the job? Probably not. So one of the things that's always stuck with me is to just not really forget where you came from, right? So as you go through these, when you learn, a lot of times you learn, it's learning by mistake, right? So as you make these mistakes, as you put yourself out there, as you try to, make change or not make change or, figure out your career path, you eventually get older, you eventually promote, you eventually become the senior firefighter. And I think the biggest thing that I'm still trying to hold on to is just not forget that. Right? Like, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget what it's like to sit on the other side of that interview table, or don't forget what it's like to be, your first day on probation. And it's like, do I make coffee at 6:45 or 7 o'clock? Right? Like all those little things that are racing through your head because you don't want to disappoint anyone. You don't want to let anyone down. You want to do a good job. And so now that I'm a supervisor, it's one of those things to always remember. Like, this guy isn't maliciously making the coffee at 7:01 instead of 6:59, right? He's trying to just please, the rest of his crew. And I think that's where we're starting to change as a fire service. There's not just getting yelled at for no reason. It's helping each other, like recognizing this is not some boys club easy job, right? This is a difficult job with physical challenges, with mental challenges, and the only people to really support us is each other, right? And so I think that's, if you can sum that up in some sort of life lesson or advice, it's just don't forget that. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget the hardships that you went through to get to where you're at.
I think that's well said and a great spot to end it. Kyle, thank you so much for sharing an hour of your time with us. Much appreciated.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that was a good episode. That was definitely a show some love to Kyle Tong episode. What did you think?
Yeah, I like these episodes. I want to do more of them where we just kind of hear people's story, different people on the fire department. And Kyle is so interesting. I always write kind of snippets of gold that people say while we're doing the podcast. And the two I wrote down for him was that when he started this grant writing process and his original Lucas grant, he goes, "Man, I didn't know anything. I just did it. I just went for it and did it." And that's classic firefighter, figure it out as you go. If you don't know, you're going to learn it on your own. The other one was, I think we're really lacking in leadership style classes and how to be a good leader in the fire department. And Kyle's a great example of that. And it really rang in my head when he said he had captains yelling at him back in Berkeley. And he just looked at him and was like, I'm just trying to please you. Tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And knowing Kyle for a few years now, it rings out like that's all he was doing. He's such a good guy and he's really trying. He's super motivated. So we got to make sure and lead our guys better.
Yeah, the fact that he came onto the department and a year in, he has people telling him no with the whole Lucas thing, and he just doesn't take that as an acceptable answer. And I think they told him no when he was on probation. He goes, "Okay, I'll just wait till I'm off probation. Then I'm going to come back with this." Then he came back with it, got some more no's, and then he just pushed it through and won and did it. I mean, that's a huge testament to him. I also thought it was interesting. Everyone's having babies.
Yeah.
8 babies in a month or two?
I think it's 8. I'm not positive, but yeah, I think it's 8. There's a ton of guys. And I just worked with one of them. I worked with Jensen the other day who had a baby, and he was the one telling me we all have a little text thread going and we go, "Hey, is everybody up for going out to go get a meal tonight?" And they bring their babies and they all kind of catch up. And man, that's really what it's all about. And especially a foundation, that's what we're trying to support. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks as always, Jason. Till next time.
Have a good week.